contrary to what many may believe, our first introduction to what we now know as these 4 significant content updates came all the way back on September 27th, 2018. A post on Clay's website brought with it information on the first ever Twitch drops to hit the game, the return of Hallowed Knights, and even the second season of the Forge event. But it was the last segment. The last segment is what lit a fire under the community's butt. It was simply titled "And Beyond," but with it came a single photo, one of the ancient gateway. And as you can imagine, speculation, theory, and hype reigned supreme for months. Such fan reaction was not only fueled by the fact that this would be the start of something new for the first time in ages, but also because Clay didn't really give us anything else to chew on for what would be another several months following this initial tease. Now, this might sound like a little jab at Clay, and it is somewhat, but that's besides the point. The point is, the community was riled up, as it was sounding like the beginning of Reign of Giants Part 2, if you know what I mean, and almost like a second, maybe even third life sprouting for the Don't Starve franchise, because let's face it, it's a little on the aging side, and it definitely was back then. But that being said, it did kind of take some time for us to hear anything again. 4 months to be exact, as on January 22nd, 2019, we were finally graced with the Don't Starve Together roadmap and first bore witness to a slew of planned updates involving brand new content for the base game, long-awaited character refreshes, and even original character releases. This was it, everyone. This was the post of all posts, and nearly everything about it sounded like Clay had come back to quote-unquote save said aging game. I recall making a video breaking down this roadmap myself all those moons ago, and I distinctly remember saying that in no way was Clay going to be able to stick to their intended release schedule with as much as they put on their plate, and would you believe it? They didn't. It wouldn't be until August 15th, 2019, just about 7 months later, that the first update for Return of Them would hit the mainstream audience and bring with it a literal turn of tides. This is where we truly begin today, folks. This is what we are here to discuss. How the aptly named Turn of Tides updates did truly mark the turning of tides for Don't Starve Together as a whole, and whether or not it was the right turn to make. I wish to make 2 things clear before we dive into it here, folks. Of course, everyone is subject to their own opinion, and I am not here to alter any of them in any stretch of the imagination. So let us all respect all varying thoughts and perspectives. Yes, we can certainly do that. Second, I will not also sit here and lie for the remainder of the video, so I will want everybody to know right off the bat that I believe the lunar biome and everything that came with it was by far the best and potentially only good thing to come from these 4 content updates in retrospect. However, in total fairness to the remaining 3 updates, we will break down each one individually to flesh them out, of course, both the good and bad, to be as unbiased as possible, okay? Does that sound good? Yes, it does. Sounds good. So, let's get to it. So what exactly does this celestial stretch of land offer us? Well, it'd be easier to list what it didn't, as the lunar island is not just one new biome, but rather 5, and each one brings with it a plethora of new creatures, flora, and more. The lunar forest is teeming with loon trees and the occasional spider dens, just like our normal forests, only these Spooter Bros are a new variant, shattered spiders. The lunar mine sees the introduction of moon glass boulders, celestial fissures, and things called inviting formations that, when brought together, unlock a new celestial crafting tab for us. The lunar baths is home to new mobs known as salamanders, along with new resources in the form of stone fruit bushes, both of which offer unique gameplay advantages and just unique mechanics. The rocky beach is, well, a beach with anemones that are practically organic teeth traps, fish bones for well, bones, and kelp for new food recipes and or survivor crafts like weapons or clothing. And finally, the lunar archipelago will offer haven via several smaller islands consisting of beaches and the other biomes perhaps. And that's all fine and dandy already, but simply being on the island itself already offers new gameplay incentives and challenges through a new status effect. Enlightenment. We see our sanity meter become an enlightenment one, and the correlation here is quite simple. The lower your sanity, the lower your enlightenment. As it stands currently, a high enlightenment only means the appearance of a strange lunacy filter, as well as gestalts, another new mob that don't deal damage but can render you immobile for a time upon multiple quick hits. The potential for expansion on both these things was and is still massive, and hopefully something comes from them again soon. But two last notes. Hounds killed on the lunar island have a 50% chance of returning as the horrifying horror hounds we have grown to know, and moonrock pangolins will leap from the sea come winter, terrifying everyone with their off-putting presence, especially when they are immediately hostile to us as players, unlike their living counterparts. They are two amazing mobs with some fantastical mechanics and great aesthetics behind them, and as you can imagine, the thoughts of more reanimated mobs began to swirl into a frenzy upon seeing these guys. For some of you out there, I am sure that little thought was given to the actual origins of these updates and the whens and wheres, because to many of you, maybe you have just started playing, but to us tenured players who have been here for quite some time, this update was the start of it all. This was how Clay started this string of fresh, new content that was coming to Don't Starve Together. So try to just put yourself in our shoes. Imagine you were there. Just imagine how elated we all were once we got the opportunity to explore it, because I can tell you, everybody was all in. And the best part too was the implications that came with the new updates, of course. What was to come after this introduction to the moon being something more than just a floating rock in the sky? That was a huge question that I even asked before this update came out. But other things like, why did our characters feel drawn to this island? Because some examinations truly dictate that something is calling to our players. Something beyond simple curiosity brought us to this stretch of land. What or who? That was another big thing. And of course, as Wickerbottom questioned herself, what were gestalts and what are gestalts an actual projection of? Ooh, this is when all the boss speculation came to play. And everybody, including me, was all in on this lunar crap. But sadly, I and many others are still waiting to flesh that out, or to have that fleshed out. For you see, the lunar island is exactly that, an island. And to get there, we needed to utilize some other new mechanics introduced right alongside the lunar stuff, seafaring. Back then, all we had was the newly added think tank and the limited options that came with it, notably the boating kit and accessories, of course. We were also granted the ability to craft flares in this update, but quite frankly, I had forgotten these were even a thing in this game until having to make this video. So that tells you how unimportant these became in no time at all. And due to the new water changes, our maps were kind of in a rough shape for a time, and maybe still are, as world generation is kind of still getting used to not having void around it. But as for the sailing itself though, you know, the main focus of this update, it too was rough around the edges at first. Thankfully, they have changed it since, but it was incredibly slow going, difficult to control, and simply janky all around. So much so, players immediately abandoned the idea of sailing to the island and instead focused on creating bridges to the lunar island with these quote-unquote boats to make for faster travel with less hassle, and you know what? They still do this to this day. Now, that might be really funny, the way that actually worked out in the end, but that's bad. That's actually really bad, to the point where maybe a discussion on that itself is worthwhile. Listen to this. when your main mechanic, right? When your main mechanic, the thing that was supposed to have a game-altering effect, is treated like it almost doesn't exist and is then used to accomplish what you meant it to do in a completely different way than was intended. Oh boy, that's just called poor design. Now, this conversation isn't even considering the fact that the sea stacks at that time had no interaction whatsoever. We could do nothing to them. So there were somewhat placeholders, probably just to fill out the ocean a little bit. Fine, they have since fixed that, whatever. But also the new puffins are just reskinnings of crows, and still are. And there was not a simple thing at all, and another single thing at all on the ocean to give it any sense of life, a wave or otherwise. And listen up. This was Clay's first true pass of anything related to seafaring. So, of course, any omissions, maybe even faults are forgiven, right? Right. That was not my gripe with it whatsoever. I understand that completely. My gripe, was something that many folk failed to see, and I still think they still do, because people berated me then, and they still don't like me now, because if you've been watching for a while, I still call out the fundamental flaws of the seafaring mechanics, the boating. It's wrong. It's just, it doesn't feel right, okay? But before we get into that, we need to discuss the next two updates, because you'll come to see that all three seafaring updates had me and potentially others asking the same question. Why is the focus so much on the water and not the lunar stuff in a stretch of updates called the Return of Them? I know the answer to that question, and I'm sure you won't like it just as much as I don't. However, let's jump forward yet another 4 months to the next Return of Them chapter, the Salty Dog update. By now, the sea stacks had been given a once-over and were mineable for rocks, but a new rock formation was added to the sea for this update. Salt formations. These were quite distinguishable on the map due to their faint white glow, and would offer at least a couple new gameplay mechanics at the end of the day. The salt crystals you'd get from the formations directly could be used to restore the freshness of spoiling foods by 50%, which cannot go unstated or underappreciated, mind you. We were, and are, now able to construct the salt box, which holds food items and reduces their spoilage times by a whopping 75%. However, crockpot dishes, seeds, and honey are excluded there, unfortunately. But Warley received a new seasoning that, when applied to foods, boosted their healing effect by 25%. It's not bad coming from a single new addition on the water, but also not needed in any way. It also introduced a new set of hostile mobs called cookie cutters, which really only serve to be quote-unquote just something to handle if you happen to venture out to these new salty structures, as their drops, the cookie cutters that is, are worthless, despite how rare they actually drop them. And of course, the big one, the Melbatross. At this time, this boss was both very welcomed, yet reviled, because of its proclivity to losing aggro every 2 seconds, it seemed. So it wasn't the greatest of experiences back then, beyond the hype of simply finally having a new giant for the first time in forever, especially when the drops were not so great and still kind of are worthless. But that being said, they have since fixed its aggro, so the fight is way easier to manage. So we have to give credit where credit is due. It is actually a lovely new boss fight at the end of the day, with some very fancy mechanics that fit the seafaring build very, very nice. I do enjoy it. I think you're starting to understand where we're going with this, folks, but. Let's answer that question that I floated about a minute ago. Why has the focus been on the seafaring over that of the well-received and arguably far, far better lunar content? Well, the answer is not that Clay has been planning and working on something huge related to it, because every single update since the initial one has been solely seafaring content, along with, course, with some character reworks and releases thrown into the mix, but that's besides the point. The answer is not that Clay has simply forgotten about it, okay? By any stretch, because I am 100% certain that we will someday get something huge for it down the line. Again, that is not what I'm saying. The answer is this, though, folks. Clay doubled down and has since refused to change direction until things are settled. They made a choice, a big choice, to add boating and water mechanics to Don't Starve Together. And again, every major update since has been focused on making said boating as interesting as they could. Now, whether or not they have done a good job of that is up for debate, very much so. Why do you think we're here? But, I do say, or I do want to say, if you enjoy the seafaring, absolutely more power to you. Again, what did I say at the beginning? I'm not here to take anything away from your experience. Not at all. That's not what we're here for. I do, however, want you to know that I, for one, despise all of it. I just want to make my stance perfectly clear. That's what I believe. I believe everything about it to be fundamentally broken. I really do. Even though they've tweaked things to make it a little better, just the seafaring itself is fundamentally broken and is easily argued to be completely unnecessary. It really is. And it might honestly have been, and is, a wrong turn from the game at the end of the day. But before any final thoughts, questions, or anything is floated, there is still one last update. One last update I need to mention. And we know what it is. It's very recent. The most recent one. Hook, line, and anchor. If ever there was an update to swing my judgment towards the neutral side of things in this argument, this would be it. I honestly enjoy a lot of what Hook, Line, and Anchor brought and tried to do. However, it too brought with it an unfortunate question needing answering. Why, though? The new fishing mechanics are fluid and intuitive, more than I could ask for considering how I thought it would go. And I'm sure the whole proper tackle and bait thing is more finely tuned than it was in beta when we first looked at it. The numerous fish of the sea are obviously welcomed and really, really cool, if even just for filling space out there on the water. However, I still would have preferred giving them proper, unique use beyond most simply just leading the fish meat. Although, I will say, fish meat and thus fish steak are really, really freaking good additions to this game regardless, so I can understand wanting to go get them. And speaking of fish guts, the 3 new fish recipes are, without fail, some of the better recipes to hit Don't Starve Together in quite some time. And of course, do provide some incentive to fish, although the problem is, you don't need the new sea life to make the new sea foods. But finally, the newly introduced narwhale and skitter squids. Both are amazing additions and really help make the water feel more alive more often than not, and both offer unique gameplay experiences too, which is always what we're after. And to boot, they look like Don't Starve mobs for Pete's sake. Hook, Line, and Anchor was finally the update that folk like me were waiting for like another 3 months-ish following the Salty Dog update. However, it still got people talking. Or at least it got me talking, then I made a video of it, and then everyone was talking about it. But here's what we were asking in that video. What's the incentive? All the new stuff on the water? Very cool. Fun and unique. All 3 of those things? I can't argue against at all. I literally cannot argue against that, and I won't. But all the new things on the water, I ask, are they needed? No, not needed. Not even in the slightest. Now, that is not Hook, Line, and Anchor's flaw, though. It's the flaw of all 4 content updates in the return of them. And yes, I even include the lunar biome. Listen, guys. We can't just sit here and say that since something is new and exciting and that you enjoy it, that we can't be critical about it. That is the very same childlike mentality that threatens and burdens like the entire human race in every single argument and conversation ever, right? But more so on the internet, of course. Not one soul on this earth can truly be critical about anything unless said person truly cares about the thing that they're being critical about. So, I don't think any of you can doubt that I don't care for Don't Starve. So we're not here to be a cynic for cynic's sake. So today, I'm going to end or wrap up with this. I will offer a statement regarding the game, as it is, following these updates, right? Mention what maybe could have been done a little differently while still providing counter arguments to what I say, and then, of course, just simply open it up for everyone else to share their thoughts and opinions down below. Sound good? Sounds good. This first one's a doozy, everybody, so hold on to your butts. The turn of tides and the seafaring should never have been a thing. Remember that tease of the ancient gateway that we started today with? We should have vanquished the ancient fuel weaver, been granted access to or sent via Charlie to the celestial plane via said gateway, and have never been forced to sail anywhere. Because as we wrap up today, you'll know what I mean by forced. But since we are stuck with it, and here's the counterpoint, Clay has doubled down. So just give us more boat options, Clay. Oh my goodness gracious. Why do we still just have a literal circle of wood that floats to the destination? And even if we're just playing with one of us. Yeah, that's thought number one, okay? We should have never have had it. We should have gone through the ancient gateway. It would have made more sense. It would have been total endgame stuff. Endgame of endgame would have been better. And since we have it anyway, give us better boats, please. For the love of all things, give us better boats. Number two, and I think a lot of people are going to kind of agree with this, lunar and celestial content should have been the absolute main focus of this string of updates called the return of them. I mean, there's almost nothing to argue here. The lunar biome and the implications that come with it are far superior in every way to the seafaring. And it would have made way more sense to work on that over the water content. It really would have. Because as we'll find out, and as we've been discussing, what had they done with the water content? Nothing. Nothing. The lunar biome was the best thing that they added. So much new stuff and things that actually infect the gameplay. They affect the gameplay. And if they would have made it endgame stuff, would have been even better. Would have been even better. Why? Why the water content? Because number three, hardly any thought was put into the water content because none of it matters. None of it has altered the pre-existing and far better survival loop that we already know in every way, shape, or form. Now, I know what you're saying. Beard, player choice. It's nice to have the options for other things, right? Absolutely. Right. But answer me this. Are you truly telling me right now, you over there, are you telling me that you're going to spend all this time going after all this content on the water, even the lunar biome, over that of just staying on the mainland, to do what you know works 100% of the time, and that you're actually going to survive with? Nah, I know the answer to that. I know the answer to that because all of our answers are going to be the same. There is no subjective response here. I know that's kind of like super duper hardcore tyrannical thing right there, but there's not. There's no point. You're not going to do this stuff over what you already know. I know that's a gameplay loop that might get boring for us, especially us players who are tenured. But, okay, if they actually if they focus on the lunar content and made stuff as big as it could have been, imagine 4, because the first one, but then imagine 3 focused lunar biome celestial content. Can you imagine what we would have gotten? Like, that could have really changed the game. But now we just have the lunar biome sitting there as it was many months ago, still the same. Now we got all this water stuff that we don't need to do. So, yeah, there's no incentive. So, that's thought number 3. And finally, and this is something that has been unfortunately missing in more than just these content updates, which is honestly kind of scary in and of itself. Where are all the character-specific interactions with all these new alterations? Why are our survivors just so nonchalant and not making a big deal about any of this new stuff that is happening in the constant, right? The lunar stuff they did, their examinations were just so great, dude. They alluded to some major confrontations coming and crazy celestial powers that even Charlie was afraid of. But then all this water stuff came and nothing. You know, it's unfortunately, like I said, something that we're missing. Even in the recent character updates, we're missing lore. Clay's slipping, and it's scary. Maybe it's just me, but ever since the first Turn of Tides update, everybody, all these months back now, I felt that every update has been forced, and content has just been thrown in and added for the sake of content for no true purpose, and that's a problem. That's a problem. But that's my piece, folks. Almost all of it. Hopefully it all came across, because again, I wasn't here to be a cynic for a cynic's sake, but instead just wanted to relay my thoughts of the direction of the game as a whole, and of course these updates as they came out, of course. And I'm sure I'll know how I did through the like to dislike ratio and through the comments down below, so we shall see. I just want to have a civil conversation, folks. You know, we can all have varying opinions and still have a lovely conversation. But thanks for watching, everyone. Well wishes to ya. I need a haircut, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.